Okay, hello everyone. Hello. Okay, so welcome to the AX Challenge panel discussion, which is going to address the LY Corporation Group's initiatives with all the key people across the operating departments and how they are taking on reform of building things. We're not going to be talking in abstract terms, but actual success cases and issues being faced on the ground. I'm from the Service Infra Group. I'm not the CTO, the TDO. My name is Yoshioka. It's a pleasure to be here. Okay. And with that, we have 4 panelists that we will be hearing from, whose discussion I will be facilitating. We only have 50 minutes today, so not a lot of time together, so let's get straight into it. Beginning with a quick self-introduction from each of our panelists and what AX initiatives each of your teams are working on. Beginning with Oohira-san, please. Yes. Hello. I am the Development Unit Lead, Oohira, in the Media SBU. And I'll talk about the AX steps we've taken thus far. You can see the 5 E's on screen right now. At the top, envision, which is a definition of what we're trying to achieve with an AX in the first place. In our organization, we want to maximize the product value offering, and as a development organization, increase development productivity and increase product quality. And the AX is to be used to that end. That forms the backbone of our initiative. Then we build the environment, actually apply it, and share anything good that comes out of our efforts with one another, and perform organization-wide awards in order to promote AI activities, and then measure organizational output and bring our outcomes gradually closer to this vision. Those are the steps we've taken so far. And I'll talk a little bit about our levels here at the end. The first level at the top is what happens before working on an AX. Optimizing current process efficiency. So for example, let's say you have a lot of meetings and you don't have enough time for dev. There's a lot of systems, which makes maintenance hard. Even if you implement AI in such a situation, effects would be quite limited, so you need to be thorough in eliminating waste before any of that. Then given that, you implement AI into your existing workflows. And in doing so, there's awesome things that happen and many limits that we ran up against. And so based on that, you need to redesign the dev process as a whole and standardize as an organization, which is what we did. For example, we also have spec and test-driven development implemented in our organization, but the most critical point is the foundation of all that, engineering practices. For example, properly breaking down responsibilities, limiting impacts through phased implementations, reviews, and things like that, making sure that AI does them properly, and then self-verifications, verifying whether or not they are actually doing that properly or not. These are the types of organizations we built, and I believe that will connect us to the automation we're talking about here. Number 4 is scaling to AI-centric maturity, and we have not yet reached this stage. To close, I'll talk about the challenges we faced in our initiatives. Number 1 is the accumulated pull requests waiting for reviews. Indeed, there were a lot that piled up. Even if you implement AI, do you get immediate effects? No. It's very important to trim down those bottlenecks when they happen. This is important for us. Number 2, in attempting to improve efficiencies as this is a significant pressure. You fill your empty time with tons and tons of tasks and lose opportunities to learn. This is something people on the ground told us. And then, once AI starts producing output, our learning opportunities get lost faster and faster. I think this is an extremely critical issue which needs tackling as an organization. And 3 is communication between humans is slower when compared to AI. So this is an issue. So the thought is we might need to revise roles and responsibilities slightly, and this is happening as a discussion in our organization. Thank you. That's all from me. Thank you. Next, Kobayashi-san from Commerce. Sure. I'm from the Shopping SBU and the unit lead for the Product Development Unit 3. Kobayashi here. Thanks for having me. I'll talk about the AX initiatives we've done and what we've done in the Shopping SBU, the organization I belong to. First, I'll talk about the 2 lines you see on screen at the top. Number 1 being the first initiative that we worked on, which is about building a knowledge database. So, AI development, not even just development, but all AI optimization initiatives need to be spread throughout the organization, which is what we focused on here. And this is something that goes to our great efforts to foster relevant culture here. Those of you from LY might have heard about this, but we always say nice tackle and things like that in our morning all hands, etc. So what is this all about? In using AI, you're able to improve on various different issues. But you need to there's a lot of improvements that don't get to the heart of the process. You make something, you implement, you can use this immediately. That's not something that happens very easily. You need to try doing something fundamental like that. But those tries are quite difficult. And try, meaning how you score in rugby, similar to a touchdown in football, is the heart of this initiative here. Let's try. Number 2 is code generation, another focus of ours that we have begun. And what we've started doing is looking into how much AI has been used in pull requests. People write into those requests how much AI was used, and we visualize that data. And we began this originally from early 2024, and 40 to 50% of those requests are now made by AI. So indeed, there's been progress. However, at the same time, despite the AI making this many pull requests, we have the main merge count, we have the 4 keys, basically the number of deployments, and there have not been any significant changes in these metrics yet. This is an issue. So we need to find a new breakthrough in order to accelerate improvement here. Next, I'll talk about points 3 and 4 in parallel. We also are trying to strongly promote AI-driven development, and these are initiatives on that point. One critical thing we think relates to this is how you get AI to give you the information you want and what information you have to give it to do so. I think we need to be creative in this regard. And to that end, building an information platform or something like that is another thing we are trying to do. And I'll talk about the details of this on the next page. But those are our initiatives. And lastly, standardization. I mentioned knowledge sharing at the beginning, which we have been working on. So these success stories being rolled out and shared laterally and applied on a standard basis to this workflow, this work process from a bottom-up basis is another initiative we have in mind, in place. Of course, there's various issues, which are those indicated in these bullets. I'd like to add some context about the information platform I mentioned. Why did we need this? We have this service, Yahoo Shopping. that I'll mention here. Every month, the number of active source code repositories is over 1,000 or so. That's the scale of this service. And the size of this service, in terms of specs, what's in the source code, etc., all being thrown into an AI context for dev and for design, given the current level of AIs in the world, is not possible. So, as you can see in the middle of this slide here, we have this low-grain information, so basically manual level information that we give to users could be retrieved across boundaries. And in order to get higher grain information, if you turn your eyes to the bottom of the slide, in terms of domains, you can get close domain information. So here we have the search domain, and you can pull information out of the search domain specifically. And we've built a platform in which you can retrieve information in this way, MCP'd it, and it is now available for call via Claude, etc. And those are our initiatives. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Contents and membership. Son-san, over to you, please. We'd like to share how we promote AI. We have already introduced AI from 2023. We are at phase 3 at the moment, promoting our activities. In our first phase, we established a governance to make quick decisions, and we have developed application so that we can run maintenance. So that's the platform we built. In the second phase, based on the first base platform, we promoted automation, the support tools for BM and automation and so forth, or automating the monitoring activities. Having said that, we also found challenges, so therefore we are now at phase 3. If I may share phase 3 in simple terms, DLC, AI native, and also turning the entire life cycle to AI native. Let me also touch upon the issues we faced. In phase 1 or 2, we had various activities like planning and release, and we tried to introduce AI in many of them. We saw some gradual improvements, but in the entire perspective, still, we had issues around lead time. So the entire picture didn't change so dramatically. So that is the velocity paradox of AI. If I may talk about the root cause, it's a handoff within that silo or function. So it's a problem of edging. R&R is clearer as the organization grows, but in the AI environment, when the phases change, it requires a clear-cut handoff. And then there is an increase in lead time or loss of context. So if I may share in more details, I think we can split into 3 things. We have found 3 causes. We concluded that all rooted to handoff. So at the time of planning, there is a wiki page, a PPT, to share the plan to the developer. The developer interprets the plan and then design the activities. And then when QA happens or a release happens, there is a handoff. So that is when there is a loss of context or increase of lead time, and there is a gap in decision making. So how can we close and solve this issue? In our discussion, AI native development cycle or BiBOP is the combined project we worked on. If I may share the concept, spec development, BiOps are put together and combined. Single source SSOT is developed, and using the pipeline that's fully systematized. Through the memory number, we save the knowledge and context to make decision. This is still in development at the moment. We receive instruction and will be a standardized domain to be implemented. Thank you. Thank you. Koike-san from Line Plus, last but not least, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. Line Plus corporate fellow, and I'm in charge of the advertisement of LY Corporation. Today, I am standing or sitting here as a representative of Line Plus. Line Plus basically is to promote the projects with LY Corporation. So it's not so different from the 3 earlier projects, but as we follow the top-down strategy, we also have our own Line Plus strategy. And through this, we strengthen our individual AI capability and increase the use as an organization. I would like to talk more specifically. First, about AI newsletter. We update the latest information in this newsletter and understand the individual needs of AI. And then through AI Tech Up, we also provide training and lecture that can be practically implemented. And those who listen to the lecture could easily implement in their day-to-day life. So this is the individual level or capability building. But if you look at number 3, this is suited for the organization. So we select the evangelist by organization. Why by organization? Because the organization have different context and environment. So we didn't want to implement across the board, but to make sure AI is implemented according to the context of the day-to-day life. So when we implement AI on our task and organization, there are some challenges, of course, but in order to solve them, we have a one-on-one consulting with evangelists to ensure all that the real-day problems are fully supported and solved. So these are the 3 cases we would like to introduce. First is the line domain. From the plan to development, we have a flow of activities. We use agent and automatically propagate the plan from the upstream to downstream. And when we do the development, we have the design documents and review the documents and start development. So that's the planning. The planning, then development. That's the sequence of activity. Once the development is completed, before human reviews, we have automatic verification using 6 agents. And in the case of Ray projects, when we develop a feature, the feature flow pipeline is automated, generally speaking, and if it's 90% per project, most of them are AI developed, and the remaining 10% is reviewed by human manually, allowing us to accelerate and expedite our development. In this, we develop an AI guide. We have already accumulated 5 AI guides so far. So it's not leveraging our knowledge. We are making sure that we can accumulate our knowledge. In a global B2B project, we have, B2B office, we have a project. 100% of AI coding is enabled. So AI is almost fully coding. We talked about SSOT. We mark them down and manage all SSOT. So AI could use the data at any time. This is not just a specification documents in the planning phase, but at the execution phase during projects. We have a project memory, what happened during the project, also managed in SSOT. So this can be shared among members, but could be shared with AI too. So we try to incorporate the most amount of data there. So these are the real experience and the real challenges we experienced so far. One is the variation between individuals to leverage AI. Even though some individuals are good at using AI, still there are a long way to fully utilize as an organization. So we do not believe that a full AX transformation is completed. When we do AI, there are some areas where process optimization could not be achieved. So we not just want to use them as tools, but we need to redesign how we work so that the entire process is incorporated. And as the keynote speech, Yuvin-san mentioned, project development alone cannot solve everything. Like second line security, PR, legal, or activities in a large-scale company, these functions are also important. So we need processes developed suited for AI. Otherwise, it'll be hard to promote and make progress in the project. So developing the process will be the next target.
とですね。
Thank you. Right, thank you. Wonderful. The LY Group Corporation Group is a huge enterprise, so there are various AX initiatives and challenges as well. Lots of different colors. So, next theme. How to measure the impact of our AX initiatives is the next thing I wanted to ask about. Kobayashi-san from Commerce mentioned briefly that even if there's more code being generated by AI, this doesn't necessarily shorten lead times. And even across society, in development teams, yes, AI development is making progress, but people are unable to judge how much dev productivity this has led to. And I think this is a comment and an issue that's often faced. So, Seonu-san, you also mentioned lead time. Could you give us some thoughts on this? Right. So, there are various different metrics that we use to measure AI productivity improvements. In dev, this is lead time, which is very important. Obviously, that's not the only metric we use. The level of the achievements and productivity that you can make with low resources is important as well. So labor and other AI-related costs are important to measure as well. And also, lastly, there was mention of how much contribution can be made to the company, to the organization, which is very important to us as well in our office initiatives. So the knowledge and know-how that comes out of our projects and how much of that can be returned to the company is something else that we would like to measure with various metrics. So what specific initiatives and attempts at improvements of those numbers are you making right now? Do you have some examples? Right. Before I get into that, I'd like to speak to the personal side. So our organizational goal is tripling. And of course, it's important to improve individual functions in order to hit this 3x goal. However, we need to reduce lead time between these individual features and place them in parallel. And we hit that 3x figure by making these processes move in parallel. And so we talked about vibe ops a little bit a moment ago. And building this in order to improve the life cycle overall is another initiative we have. I hadn't mentioned it yet, but on the next page, or rather in the next stage, I wanted to actually measure the impact and improvement more specifically. 3x is incredible, but 10x is our goal. So indeed, we have a long road ahead of us, don't we? Yeah. Of course, we're working on these improvements, but If 3x continues for 3 years, then we could perhaps hit that 10x figure. So we're going to keep working. Looking forward to it. Next, Kobayashi-san, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned a moment ago that you have very similar issues. Any thoughts here? Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed. In the exact same way that was mentioned, there's this lead time issue, and also there's no increase in the number of merges based on pull requests. But the bottleneck we have right now is reviews. Any issues that we have visualized, as long as we take some sort of action against them, I think we'll be able to make that improvement at some point or another. So we're making that try right now. The question is what happens after that? And what happens with these issues, which indeed will pile up if we are unable to visualize them? So when we think about what that's going to be, recently we have Claude Code, Codex, etc., which are used for vibe coding. And if you were just to make something, then you can make something very quickly through this vibe coding. However, within this aspect of product development, you need to think about why there's no increase in the number and velocity of merges. And that's because we have to provide very important features to our users. So putting together these features is one thing. The other is in putting together a product, we need to provide something that is high quality. And we're unable to guarantee that at the same velocity that AI does, which is a pain point for us, disabling us from increasing product development velocity. So if we look at quality and velocity, how do we measure these aspects? To be perfectly honest, that's not something we are sure of whatsoever. What we could measure and what countermeasures we could take to improve upon that, I think, is the next thing we need to consider. Right. Oohira-san also mentioned pull requests briefly, so I'd like to hear your thoughts here as well. Right. So for pull requests, at the end of the day, the impact on the bottleneck is that they can impact throughput, etc. But they're also very visualizable. So you could visualize what's happening there and say you have phases such as awaiting review, finished review, awaiting merge, and make a visual representation of how many are waiting where, and then make improvements against that. Also, if the pull request is big, there's all sorts of perspectives that get mixed up in there, increasing cognitive cost, which deserves addressing as well. On the other hand, stepping away from implementation, Kobayashi-san mentioned a moment ago that there are lots of areas there aren't metrics being taken for. Lots of people are using a ton of different tools. And how you understand those bottlenecks and resolve them is probably where the next problem is going to lie. I see. So not just for development tools, but all internal tools need to be observed, perhaps, right? Okay. Lastly, I'd like to ask about what things are like at Line Plus. Sure. So I want to talk a little bit more about the bottlenecks. Actual development is really accelerating. Source coding is accelerating. And also, small project teams are driving projects using AI. And that speed of drive indeed has accelerated, and I do feel this. However, in terms of results, not only small projects, but big projects need to be part of this journey, and these need to integrate with one another, which is a huge pain point for us. We talked about SSOT completion, but when integrating with other teams, you need to rewrite all of the specs. Then you'll end up with two sources, which is a problem. And also, when communicating, it becomes unclear which the original source document was. And indeed, that creates this problem of not being able to control AI output. And so, in order to level ourselves up, we need to run these processes in parallel, together, and improve them together. Okay. I'd like to move on to the next question, but I think it kind of segues naturally from what we were talking about. I'd like to talk a bit about quality. So, in AI activities spreading and their output increasing, so for example, the number of AI created pull requests increasing, we need to process these quickly, less lead time, not improve. But at the same time, there's this dilemma of needing to ensure quality. And I'd like to ask first Oohira-san about your perspective. Sure. So, ensuring quality, this issue of ensuring quality, is something that indeed we have done thus far as well. But through AI acceleration, it's becoming a new challenge. We reviewing and verifying everything in perfect alignment with AI acceleration is not realistic. So, to some extent, we need to leave some things to AI and focus our own efforts and judgments on the more critical areas. I think that's where we are. But the situation is, it would be great if we could do that as soon as we implemented AI, but that's not the case. So we need to build that environment ourselves. And how we do that and what requirements we fulfill with AI and how we can build that automatic verification environment is going to be important for quality assurance moving forward.
重要なところは
So the critical points require human. So what do you mean by critical points? Where would that be? Like life, asset-related things, or personal information-related areas. We can't completely leave the task to AI. I think human intervention will be necessary. Okay, so commerce also involves money and critical information. How about that? Absolutely, yes. Like money or information leakage and violation. We do have sensitive information stored, so I believe there is a phase we need to thoroughly verify. I may want to go a little off topic, but recently I tried to think using paper and a pen. And why do I do this? It's because when we develop using AI, we receive enormous amounts of input. And if we just read through and review, it sounds very plausible. So, but to be fully convinced, we want to lower the gear of thinking. So I think we need paper and pen to think. So that's the attempt I'm working on. And through this endeavor, through the development phase, even though we utilize AI, can we run from end to end? I don't believe so. Maybe we need to slow down the velocity. Sometimes we need to expedite the velocity. And I think we need to switch those gears. The switching the gears is the important point. So for AI-driven development, we need to have the check gates and have a moment to contemplate and make human intervention and decisions to go ahead. Where is the check gate? One is about quality. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, it's very important to think what we are developing. So the early phase of development would be important for human intervention and looking into the necessity and significance of development. Absolutely. In the content, it's true, you handle personal information, sensitive information. What do you think about that? Yes. In our team, we are in a similar situation as the two earlier speakers mentioned. When we have a project AI-based activity, we have gates by stage and have human intervention where necessary. And if I may add some comments, AI is prone to failure or errors. It's inevitable. So that should be built in our assumptions when we drive development. So in our CNM, QA release and monitoring, QA and monitoring after release, post-release is the area where we place more importance on human. We look into automatic recovery and the ways we distribute to enhance the stability of our services. So Son-san, you talked about QA, quality assurance, and I think it was very interesting that Kobayashi-san mentioned that the early development phase. Now, in the material, you were able to minimize human intervention to 10%. Would you kindly elaborate on the quality aspect as well? So 90%. So AI can shoulder 90% of the work, and the remaining 10% is the review by human. Like in the case of screen, it's very hard for AI to review, so human will review manually to confirm the functionality has been implemented successfully. So in the case of projects, AI will do the activity, and there is a 6-stage quality check. We have an agent to run this 6-stage quality check. And there is a process for humans to review that the AI have done the work correctly. So it's true, AI makes failure, but human also makes failure. Depending on projects, there are a predefined specification, and we develop a test case according to the specification and test AI's coding and confirm there's no issue to finally assess that the coding has completed. That's the quality control we have in place. AI could possibly cause hallucination. So one representative example is that we ask a document review. Sometimes AI would generate text on their own, and that has been an issue. So what I've done, if there's a word that I personally do not know, I ask AI not. I make a prompt for AI to refer to the dictionary and not use any words outside of the dictionary. And if it's a word unknown by AI, it will specifically note that AI cannot decide accurately. And those areas are where human would need to review and check and add in the glossary or a dictionary. So these kind of harnesses would be necessary to implement in order to enhance the quality. Thank you. That was a very interesting topic to hear. Before we leave it to human, I believe before we leave to AI, a human used to take that responsibility. And if we have a glossary and a very accurate glossary, we will be able to make the requirement documents, and the quality of the documents would enhance. So I think that would be a similar situation. I would like to move on to the last question. First one. The situation and challenges for AI implementation in large services. Ibin-san mentioned in the keynote speech as well. For a brownfield development, it's quite challenging, isn't it? In Line and Yahoo, the code base is enormous and significant. And for Line service, it's been 30 years since its launch. So the existing service is already incorporated in the specification, and it's an accumulation of the long period of time. So these context that's been utilized for a long time, it's hard to leverage AI. So I'm wondering how you overcame these challenges. We would love to hear. I think there's a lot of people who are interested in this area. In the comments, I heard you developed an information platform. Would you kindly elaborate on that? Yes, the trigger was when we started the AI-driven development. As I mentioned, for the services, we have more than 1,000 repository in our services. Even though we start from the design on making changes to a certain application, we don't know what information we need to feed into the AI, because if you put all the information, that will overflow. So even though we give the source code for one repository, it will overflow. So it wouldn't be successful for development. So we needed to make a decision what not to feed into AI. Otherwise, it would be hard to generate. So that's the reason we came to develop this. So this is the upstream, like basic design. When we design the application, we need the course level information across the different application. So we needed that mechanism, and then first feed that information for design. And once the design is completed, let's say there is a merchandise screen, we will give more information and ask the AI to work on detailed design. And then finally, we have repository level or information fed in, so that AI could refer to that repository level. So it's like a 3-stage or perhaps 4-stage level, all with different granularity of information fed into AI. So that's how we approach the AI-driven development.
However, there are indeed still issues here as well. We're moving forward with this initiative, but looking at the way the world's going, indeed, teams and organizations with great AI-driven development velocity speed are all over the place. But we as an organization are different in terms of scale and history, how long we've been around. And so we need to build an environment in which we can try at that scale, or else we're going to lose. And even in our services, we do have smaller microservices that we built in which we design, dev, and operate, and have tried this out. And we want to build success stories there and roll those out with speed, or else we're going to lose. So I think we need to build the systems that enable that. And these are all things that we are thinking about and studying, but if there's anybody sitting here on stage with examples of having succeeded at that, we'd love to hear it. Right, it's not an example, but since you mentioned microservices, I'd like to talk a bit about them myself. So, in C&D as well, we worked on service improvement thus far, but in our next stage, we want to work on games, music, and talk size services. So basically apply those improvements to our bigger services. And the thought we had in doing so is previously we were talking only about development methodologies, but architecture itself of our services needs to be improved for AI. As you know, context size is limited in the for AI. And of course, we have this issue of overly large contexts. Whenever there's a failure or a mistake that happens, we need to minimize the scope of its impact. One example of this is a microservice architecture. All services don't need to be incorporated into a single context. All these services which are adjacent to another could be incorporated into a context adjacently for dev and development. And the client size and front end, etc., have various other methodologies, but we need to improve the architecture as a whole in order to address this issue. Yeah, so the earlier speakers just talked about microservices. I'd like to address things from a slightly different angle. Let's say we have a very small scope in which things are working well, but at scale, things don't go well. So for example, if you're looking at creating a predictor for advertisements, if you make a proper model, but then there's an issue of like 2 clicks happening, then the CTR would double, which means that it wouldn't be valid as information. And this is hard to detect within a single microservice. So using AI to connect smaller services for a bigger service means that end-to-end monitoring is more important than ever. It might start looking like a black box, but connecting the front to the back and looking into what normal data is needs constant monitoring. And it'd be great if we could have AI do this. And when a problem becomes apparent, you zoom into where that might be, find the component that is problematic, and detect it as soon as possible. And that's the kind of technology that I think we'll have to look more into moving forward. What about the media side? Right. My thought, listening to all of that, is that microservices themselves have been a philosophy for a while. But a higher frequency of changes in which we want to minimize the scope of impact is the other philosophy here. And when humans don't do this, but AIs do, this will change the frequency of update, and I think that could lead to further improvements. Thank you very much. We are getting ready to close, but I'd like to get a short comment from everyone, because those in the audience are about to launch AX-related initiatives, I'm sure. So if you all have a short message for our audience, please. And I'm sorry for the very rough question. No worries. So in what we've talked about today, the roles of engineers and how they're going to change moving forward is a discussion that's being had throughout society. But there's still a lot to think about, is my thought coming out of today. And so, what do we need to do to protect as engineers? Is another big question that is important in making big achievements alongside building AI-related knowledge. And I hope we can accomplish this together. Sure. Then I'd like to send a message to the engineers listening. In this era in which generative AI has come up so quickly, I think a lot as an engineer as well. What's going to change? My conclusion is probably nothing. So, what engineers have been called upon to do historically is get a lot of high-quality input and create output based on it. That's been the case forever. And I don't think this is going to change dramatically moving forward. What's going to change with the advent of AI is we'll be called upon to act with higher velocity, which is going to require practice, drilling. You can get all sorts of huge volumes of information from AI in your day-to-day, and you need to continue practicing, taking that input and creating good output based on it. So let's do that together. Right. Rather than the technical side, I want to speak about how to feel. In the age of AI, there's a lot of change happening every day, and our attitude towards our work and our technology will be changing as well. AI will continue to be a huge trend. And engineers love being agile, right? Try something out, and if you make a mistake, then find another way to get around it. We need to take on new challenges actively to succeed in the AI era. So, in my development, experience, there were a lot of people who were called good developers when the specs were finalized. In the AI era, we'll be able to develop these specs more quickly and better. So I think we're going to have to cover a broader field, especially for reviews. We can't just look at the specs and then the code. We have to think about why that code, why those specs are there in the first place. Developers need to be able to be more considerate of the design stage of things as well. Thank you. So, listening to what all of you have said today, development is indeed significantly changing and will continue to change rapidly. So, we need to ride this so-called big wave as you are enjoying your AX initiatives. And I hope today provides some inspiration for those of you who have listened in the audience. Thank you for your participation and your attention.